Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my last upload was about the four most overrated anime of all time, in my opinion. And as you may recall, if you saw that video, I promised a follow up about what, in my opinion, are the four most underrated anime. And I'm nothing if not a man of my word, as long as I remember it. So here it is. Now, just like last video, there's a couple things I want to get out of the way as fast as possible, but I'm going to try and make it more concise and keep this video snappier than the last one. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is that I'm not necessarily saying that these four anime were received poorly. I don't think anyone is really out there calling these trash, or at least not very many people, but that being said, they were definitely not talked about enough, and they still are not talked about enough considering that these are all front runners in their respective genre or subgenre, which leads me into my second thing that I need to talk about. I kind of changed things up for this video, and I decided to pick four anime that are by far the most underrated in their specific category. Now, you might be asking, why did I do this? Well, it's because I sat on three series for a long time, and I was like, well, the video is supposed to be about four. How am I supposed to pick the fourth one? Because I had three in mind, and I didn't really know which one I should talk about fourth. And I realized that each anime I was talking about was in a completely different genre, and so I decided to look at it like that. So each one of these anime is by far the most underrated in its respective genre or subgenre. So just want to make that clear. It's not that important. I think these are overall extremely underrated, but it's a distinction worth noting. And I suppose I should not go any longer without actually saying the names of the series, and that is in the order that we will be talking about them. It is Drifters, Hinomaru Sumo, Braves of the Six Flowers, and Id Invaded. So there you go. There's the list. And I want to say, you know what? Do not call yourself an anime fan if, actually, don't call yourself an anime fan. That is cringe. Don't ever say that in public. That's like telling people you eat shit. Like, okay, technically not a crime, but you're weird. Don't talk to me. But don't think to yourself that you're an anime fan if you honestly have not seen any of these or all of them. So, what I want you to do is make a pinky promise with me right now that after the video, you will go watch any of these series that you have not seen. And then finally, I want to say spoilers ahead, some minor, some quite major, but you have been warned. Now that that shit is all out of the way, let's get to it. Let's start talking about these four animes, starting with Drifters. So, which genre is Drifters the most underrated anime from? Isekai. It is no doubt the single most underrated isekai that humans have ever created. In a genre that is filled with some of the most generic, mind numbing bullshit, Drifters stands out as something that a cool guy made. And it was like, whoa, no way, this rocks. And I've talked about for a long time, my main problem with isekai is that for some reason, isekai has become synonymous with borderline slice of life. And so all too often, isekai feel exactly the same. They're just some character, some bumblefuck idiot running around a fantasy world with almost no danger at all. It's very lighthearted, oftentimes comedy focused. And I've talked about before that isekai needs to start experimenting more with darker themes, because the only one that I know of that is extremely dark is Drifters. And oh boy, it is dark. This anime is brutal. So I will warn you now, if you haven't seen it and you are not a fan of pixel on pixel violence, if it makes you feel squeamish, maybe avoid this one because yeah, it's dark. It's definitely not a shonen. It's not for little kids. But that's what's fun about it. It's so refreshing to have an isekai where people are going from our world to just a fucked up hell world. And I really like it. And to top it all off, as a big bonus, there is fun little history tidbits in there for you if you want that, because most of the people in Drifters who come from Earth and then get isekai to this other world are at real people, or at least were reported to have been real people at some point, but That being said, you don't actually need to know like super deep lore about Oda Nobunaga to enjoy this anime. It's there if you want it, but if you don't, no big deal. You don't need to know anything about history. You don't need a degree to enjoy this anime. If you want to sit back and just bask in the brutally violent, dark, mature isekai that is Drifters, you can go for it. And I would highly recommend that. Next up, we have the most underrated sports anime. This is objectively true, first of all. If you disagree with me, you're wrong, standard, whatever. But sports anime are oftentimes overrated, chronically overrated. I would say that sports anime probably reach beyond their means quite often when it comes to critical acclaim. And I'm not saying that sports anime is bad. In fact, I'm on record as saying that I love sports anime because they are so ridiculous and fun that it's just a wild ride. But Hinomaru Sumo is one of the only truly satisfying sports animes that I have ever seen. And it exemplifies two of the things that I think are cornerstones, absolute pillars of sports anime, and that is a main character who's an underdog who's worth rooting for, and someone who is extremely passionate about a sport. In this case, it's sumo, which is a sport that honestly has not caught on very much in the Western world. I would be willing to bet that on the entire western seaboard of the United States, there's probably less than 10,000 sumo practitioners. But any sport can be made interesting by someone who's extremely passionate, but sumo's already kind of interesting. So it does what sports anime do best, right? It takes a sport and it cranks it up to absolutely absurd, unrealistic levels. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is in any way, shape, or form realistic. It's not. It's clearly a massive glorification of everything sumo is supposed to be, not necessarily what it is. But what really sets it apart for me in terms of sports anime and being underrated is that it's got like very interesting visual style sprinkled in throughout the series. It's something I don't see people talking about a lot. I mean, I don't really see people talking about this anime in general a lot, but not a lot of people praise it for actually having the balls to show like extremely cool stylized visuals throughout. And the other thing that I love about it, and this is the major spoiler that I was talking about, is the main character does not win in the end. All of the odds are stacked against him, right? He has the work ethic, he has talent, but he's tiny. He's in a sport that relies on size, and you need to be a big old boy to wrestle with big old boys. And he's like, I forget his exact canonical height, but he is, I think, like 4'5". He's very short, tiny little guy. They make fun of him for it constantly. And I'm glad he doesn't win because he shouldn't win. In sports, talent and hard work only go so far. Sorry, I would like to amend that previous statement. Talent and hard work only go so far in sports where physical stature is the main determiner of dominance. Is determiner a word? Determination? I think I just made up a word, determiner. No one talk about that. I'm sorry. But sorry for spoiling it. I think it's still worth watching despite knowing that spoiler. It's a fun journey. There's cool friendship moments. People eat yummy looking food. And all in all, you get to watch big muscular guys wrestle. So what more could you ask for, honestly? Okay, next up, Braves of the Six Flowers. Actually, it's called Rokka Braves of the Six Flowers, I believe. I'm just going to call it Six Braves because that's what it should be called. I honestly think that one of the reasons this anime mostly flew under the radar when it came out is because they named it atrociously. It's way too long. It's weird. It should have just been called Six Braves. But this is probably the most underrated pure shonen that I've seen in a very long time. It's definitely the most underrated pure shonen that I could think of. And honestly, while it is not the best shonen and it is not the most quintessential show, it's not the best example of what shonen can be. I think personally that's Hunter x Hunter. It's really good. It's just an extremely strong shonen, and it avoids some of the classic pitfalls that shonen often falls victim to. It hits every single note that I could possibly want out of a shonen. Maybe you're a weirdo and you want other things, but Let's see, what do we got here? We have a true, actual underdog main character, not someone who is labeled as an underdog, who actually has crazy god powers that he just needed to unlock. No, we have an actual underdog main character who's just using his wits and his skill to try and compete with people using actual crazy fucking magic. It has fun little power system, not something that's necessarily worth going deep into in power scaling, but something that is entertaining, it is widely varied, and it is worth seeing. I think oftentimes shonen power systems are either way too basic or way too contrived. This is a happy medium. It's fun to look at, it's interesting to think about, but I'm not going to sit there for 35 hours and try and break it down. And a big point, something that I think it would be overlooked by a lot of people, and that is a story that is actually intriguing, which is kind of rare for shonen. Most shonen are very cookie cutter, formulaic. They are chosen one main character has to go up against singular evil character, and they clash throughout. That is sort of how it goes. Power keeps scaling up to absurd degrees. That's how it typically goes, right? That's what happened with Naruto, Black Clover, Bleach, probably One Piece. I've never seen it. That is very standard for shonen, and in this, it's different because we're seeing the story mainly focus on a guy who's just a normal man in all of this. Um, it's very grounded considering that we're in an extreme demon fantasy world. And most of all, my favorite thing about this series, the thing this anime does that for some fucking reason other shonen can't seem to do, I don't hate any characters in this show for the wrong reason. And what I mean by that is the characters that I hate, I'm supposed to hate because they're pieces of shit. And you're like, wow, I hate you. You did an evil thing. There are no characters where I'm like, wow, I hate you because you're written like a robot or you're written like a psycho or you're just horribly written in general. And it's funny that that's so uncommon that it would be noteworthy enough to be like the absolute best thing about this series, but there you go. I like all the characters. I even like this weird little vomit swamp gremlin. I think she's pretty neat. Okay, I saved the best one for last, literally. I think that this is the most underrated anime just in general, but definitely in the sci-fi mystery genre, in both of those genres, and that would be id Invaded. I've seen people asking if it's id or ID Invaded. um I honestly, I can't tell you for certain, but I've always personally thought that it was id, as in id, ego, and super ego. So I'm gonna be calling it id Invaded. If that offends you, I guess I apologize. I don't know, you're weird. But the fact that I like this anime at all should speak volumes to its quality, because if you don't know, my least favorite genre of fiction overall is sci-fi, without a doubt. It is something that I never ever read or watch. I will purposefully avoid movies most of the time if they come out they're sci-fi. I just don't like it. It just doesn't do anything for me. And one of the other one a genre that I also dislike, I don't know why I stuttered so bad there. Another genre that I dislike quite a lot is mystery, because I think oftentimes what mystery boils down to is either the twist, in big finger quotes, is way too easy to spot and you can figure it out right away, or it's complete bullshit and you never had even a chance of figuring it out because it was just an ass pull. So I really dislike sci-fi and mystery. So this is a sci-fi murder mystery anime that I'm sitting here today telling you is the most underrated anime of all time. I shouldn't have to say anything more than that, but I will briefly. This anime, I don't want to spoil anything specific. I really don't. I feel like I would be doing a disservice to people everywhere if I said any specifics about what goes down. But I can tell you broad things. Like, one, you know me, I like dark anime. I really think that this anime is worth watching. However, before you watch it, make sure you're in the right headspace because it's fucking dark. And at times, it had me feeling extremely depressed, but in a good way. Sometimes it's good for media to make you feel things, not necessarily just happy. It Invaded is the series that, out of the 4 that I've talked about today, if I had to pick only one, gun to my head, pick only one series for people to watch who see this video, it would be It Invaded. Go watch it right now. It's on Crunchyroll. I think the best way I can summarize all my feelings for the anime is that It Invaded is what Psycho-Pass fans promise you Psycho-Pass will be, but then you watch Psycho-Pass and you're like, oh, really? Okay. That wasn't as good as they made it out to be. It Invaded's got you, bro. It's what Psycho-Pass is promised to be by its delusional fan base. Anyways, there you go. There's my 4 most underrated anime of all time video, as promised. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you subscribe 64 times and leave a comment. Well, actually, yeah. Leave comment about what do you think the most underrated anime of all time is. I am genuinely curious. That's it for this video, though, and I will see you again with another video sometime in the future, because the one that I'm working on after this is going to be my biggest and longest video yet.